All right, next question is from Hillary. Is the grass always greener on the other side for you? Grass is always greener on the other side, a concept where one tends to imagine that circumstances other than their own are better until they get into that situation, and then they think that some third or maybe their original first situation was actually the better one. I struggle with this. I do have a lot of thoughts I start to imagine scenarios, and these scenarios could involve anything. They could involve, things that I'm doing or where I'm living or anything where I start to wander into the grass is greener on the other side. And then I have to remind myself that I have to discern whether would this alternative scenario actually be better, or am I falling into what can be a common circle for me of just believing that something that is a different alternative is better. So yeah, I wouldn't say that the grass is always greener for me on the other side, but I say that I have some tendencies to fall into that line of thinking, and I'm aware of it, so I try to stop it.
I think everyone has the tendency to fall into that line of thinking.
To some extent.
To some extent, because in your job, in your love life, in any aspect of your life, where you live, you can look at another place and say to yourself, that seems like it would be better.
Right.
That seems like it would be a more fun place to work. That seems like it'd be a nicer place to live. She seems like she'd be way better than my girlfriend.
Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes that would be true. There are situations where that actually would be accurate.
That is true. But you don't know. It's the unknown. And when you're thinking about that, we just have a tendency to glamorize things and to think to ourselves that, well, yes, that would be so much better, or it could be so much better. And so I think that's why it's a very human thing to have this type of thought process that the grass is always greener on the other side.
And there's been two mechanisms that I think have been useful for me, and I've talked to other people. One is saying, actually, maybe this is pretty good, right? Which is just reframe it as opposed to thinking of how something else might be better. Just imagine how what the reality is might actually be good or better than whatever it is you're thinking about. But then another one that's really good that I've found is, if this were a friend considering between what is my status quo and this alternative I'm thinking of, what would I say to them? And very often I go through that logic in my mind, and I say, actually, I would tell them that they probably have it pretty good and that they shouldn't fall into this circle of just constantly wondering if there's a better alternative. That question, asking oneself that question, I think can be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I like to ask myself, what is it about my current situation that I think is good, that I think is positive? How many pros are there? Weighing your pros and cons, I suppose. And then asking yourself if it's worth the risk to attempt something new or to try something else, because, well, it could end up as a disaster. So ask yourself what you like about your current situation.
Send me your thoughts on this. I am convinced that our audience is going to have a lot to say about that.